This is the Mennyms and Chapter 7. A visit from Miss Quigley. On Tuesday afternoon at 10 to 2, the door to the hall cupboard was opened from the inside. Vinetta, who was hanging the family's outdoor coats up on the rack in the hall — no one else in the family could be persuaded to be so tidy — politely turned the other way. The twins, Poopy and Wimpy, were in the playroom playing Monopoly rather noisily. Subi was at his window in the lounge. They did not hear the cupboard door open. Joshua, in the kitchen, still in dressing gown and slippers, was pretending to make a pot of tea in Aunt Kate's old brown teapot. He heard the door open, raised his woolly eyebrows, but did not look round from his task. Appleby, alone, coming down the stairs at that precise moment, saw the door open and spitefully stared at it as Miss Quigley emerged. Miss Quigley became aware of her staring and felt quite flustered and embarrassed. The feeling conveyed itself to Vinetta. "I wish you would learn to hang your coat up, Appleby," snapped Vinetta. "I don't know how many times I have to tell you. The hall table is not the place to put it. We might be having visitors this afternoon, for all you know." Miss Quigley, in her neat brown tweed suit, with brown gloves and shoes and carrying a large brown handbag, slipped gracefully into the kitchen whilst Appleby's attention was distracted. In the kitchen, Joshua was pouring imaginary tea into a large, old, slightly chipped cup. He ignored Miss Quigley as she passed him to leave the house by the back door. That was the way it worked. The way it had always worked for 40 long years. No one ever spoke to Miss Quigley on her way out to the back. They did not want to embarrass her by making her aware that she just lived in a cupboard and did not really have a small house of her own at the end of Trevithick Street. The back door closed behind her, and Joshua put his cup down and went out into the hall. "I think I ought to get dressed," he said grumpily to Vinetta, who by now had started polishing the hall table. We might have company this afternoon. I would feel very stupid going around like this." Vinetta looked annoyed. "I thought we had decided you could be ill for 3 weeks. Tulip hasn't finished knitting your gloves yet. I told her there was no need to hurry. I got Appleby quite interested in your convalescence, and goodness knows there are not many sensible things Appleby is interested in. I don't intend to go out yet. The gloves can wait. And I can be properly ill later on. I'll feel exhausted and go to bed early after the visitor is gone, if we have a visitor." "Very well," said Vinetta. "I suppose that will have to do. I've tidied the hall again. Tell the twins to make less noise or go out and play in the back garden. Subi will tell us if anybody is coming." At that moment, Subi's plump face appeared at the lounge door. He gave both of his parents a dour look and muttered, "She's coming." "Who's coming?" asked Vinetta in the most natural way. "Well, it's not that meter reading. It's not that meter reader, so you needn't rush for your dark glasses." "Don't be funny," said Vinetta sharply. "I'll ask you again. Who's coming?" "You know who's coming. Nobody else ever plays us a visit," replied Subi bluntly. "You shouldn't say things like that, Subi. Anybody could come. So, Who have you seen coming up the drive?" And just then the doorbell rang. Vinetta took a quick look at herself in the hall mirror and patted her neat black hair. "I wonder who that could be," she mused pointedly. "It's Miss Quigley," hissed the blue Mennym. "You know fine well it is." Vinetta ignored him and went to open the door. Joshua, having silenced the twins, fled upstairs to make himself presentable to face a very prim maiden lady. "Hortensia!" gushed Vinetta. "This is a surprise. How lovely of you to have come, especially on such a cold day. Do come in and sit by the fire." Vinetta graciously led the way into the lounge, where a leather three-piece suite was arranged round the grass fire. In front of the settee was a long, low table, nicely carved round the rim and down the legs, and with a well-polished top. Vinetta gave a warning look at Subi, who had gone back to his chair in the window and was reading a magazine. Then, having seen that her visitor was sitting comfortably, she went out to fetch the tea. The tray was always kept set in the pantry with china teacups, milk jug, sugar basin, and a plate of ageing biscuits. Vinetta waited a reasonable time to allow for the boiling of a kettle and the brewing of the tea. Then, that pretend completed, she carried the tray carefully to the table before the fire. "How nice," simpered Miss Quigley. "I always loved that willow pattern china, and those little pink biscuits are my favourites. You know what a sweet tooth I have." Vinetta passed the plate, and Miss Quigley took one old biscuit and pretended to nibble at it genteelly. She took a satisfied sip from the invisible tea Vinetta had poured. Then she put the biscuit down again and brushed a non-existent crumb from her upper lip. "I passed the Darmans on the way here," said Miss Quigley confidentially. She was peeping out of the window again. "I don't know how people can be so nosy. And I just got inside the gate when Miss England passed with her Labrador. I was pleased I'd missed her. She's such a gossip." Miss Quigley's wide-brimmed hat did shadow her doll's face, but there was no way she could have spoken intimately to the neighbours without being detected. She knew that well enough, but it would have been so delightful to have stood swapping tales with people. The next best thing was a sour grapes pretend. "I'm so pleased you came today," said Vinetta. "I have such a lot to tell you. You'll never believe all the things that have been happening here. The past week has been more eventful than many a year." Miss Quigley listened eagerly to the story of Joshua and the rat. She was truly horrified, but at the same time fascinated. It was true. Things like that do not happen every day, or even every year. "How will you manage?" she asked with concern when told that Joshua had lost his job. "Oh, we do have some savings," said Vinetta proudly, and the cheque that they sent was quite substantial. "I still earn money from the dressmaking. Tulip has her own little business venture, and then, of course, Magnus is very well paid. Though Joshua doesn't like to depend too much on his father. He has his pride." "He'll soon get another situation," said Miss Quigley soothingly. "They'll be wanting a Santa Claus at Peacham's soon. He did that a few years ago, didn't he?" 6 years ago, to be precise, but they did ask him to go back the following year. They were very pleased with his work. Joshua came into the lounge dressed in his new trousers and a grey turtlenecked sweater. "Good afternoon, Miss Quigley," he said in as pleasant a voice as he could muster. He sat in the armchair to the left of the fire and poured himself a pretend cup of tea. "Vinetta will have told you about my leg," he added. "Yes, indeed, Mr. Mennym. It must have been a dreadful experience. I was so sorry to hear of it. I hope you are feeling better now." "Improving," said Joshua. "Slowly improving, but I'll still need a lot of rest." At that moment, Wimpy, in the playroom, landed on Park Lane, where Poopy had built a hotel. Her shriek startled the grown-ups, and she must have remembered the visitor. She darted into the lounge, said sorry, and quickly darted out again. Vinetta passed without comment to her next piece of news. "There is something else I shall have to tell you. It is more serious than Joshua's misfortune." Miss Quigley looked suitably startled. Surely there could be nothing more serious than having one's leg chewed to pieces by a rat and then losing one's job in the next breath. Vinetta explained all about the letter from Albert Pond. Poor Miss Quigley stared wide-eyed. She lost her grip on the pretend. This Australian, whoever he was, owned the house. He owned the house. He even owned Miss Quigley's cupboard, and she felt sure he would not stick to the rules. "How terrible!" she cried, and fell in a heap on the floor. "She's fainted," said Subi from his seat by the window. "That's not pretend." He did not stir from his seat, nor offer to help, but having told his parents a simple fact that they might have missed, he went back to reading his magazine. Tulip came from the breakfast room to see what all the fuss was about. She had her knitting needles in her hand and her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. She regarded Miss Quigley as Vinetta's friend and usually stayed out of the way whenever she visited. "What's the matter with her?" she demanded in her usual brusque tone. Without more ado, she put her needles down on the bureau and was ready to help. "Come on, help her up. You can't just leave her lying there." They helped Miss Quigley onto the settee, patted her hands and her painted cheeks, and tried hard to revive her. Subi picked up her broad-rimmed hat and fanned her face vigorously. Slowly she came round, and when she was more or less herself again, she looked totally embarrassed. "I can't think what I came over for. No, I can't think what came over me," she fluttered. "It must be the heat of the fire. I'd best be going now anyway. I'm glad we don't have Australians to worry about in Trevithick Street." I'll say that again. "I'm glad we don't have Australians to worry about in Trevithick Street. It's my own house, you know. Father left it to me. I'll call again next week, my dear, to see how things are." She left very formally by the front door after shaking hands with Joshua and kissing Vinetta lightly on the cheek. Tulip held back from any farewell greeting and looked for once very much the unapproachable Lady Mennym. It was clear that she disapproved of fainting and was offended by the silly woman's remarks about the house in Trevithick Street. The door closed. 10 minutes later, Miss Quigley slipped in at the back entrance and went unobserved to her own private cupboard.